Welcome, friends, to another episode of Leadership Tidbits with Coach T. Wilson. I am your host and leadership mentor, Tywauna Wilson. I am excited to have you here in our virtual learning laboratory for yet another amazing leadership and personal growth session. And like this week, we have another awesome mentor that's coming to us. For me, it's all the way from Los Angeles, California. But before I bring on our mentor, couple of announcements. Today was a new episode of Elaborate Topics podcast, so make sure that you check it out, especially if you are burnt out and overwhelmed. It's a great talk. You can find it on directimpactbroadcasting.com or your favorite podcast platform. You can also binge previous episodes of this show on your favorite podcast platform or Direct Impact Broadcasting. We have had several releases here within the past few days, so want to make sure that you get caught up on that. So come on in, make sure you drop it in the chat and let us know where you're coming in from. And share this broadcast out because sharing is what? Caring. So make sure you share this broadcast out with somebody who could utilize this message and can benefit from hearing these tips. So without further ado, let's bring on our mentor for today's episode. Dan
Hey,
Faill. Woohoo! welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm absolutely stellar. Thank you so much. How's everything going in your world?
Everything is going well. It is well. This week is going awesome, and it is hot here in Ohio. So,
This is true. I actually just got off the phone with a friend in Ohio, like maybe 5 minutes before hopping on here.
okay, awesome. I'm sure your friend is awesome.
Yeah, and also very warm. Yes.
So, friends, let me introduce to you Dan Faill. Give a little bit about Dan, and he'll tell us a lot more. But I'm just giving you just a little bit, give you a taste of who you are getting some mentorship from here tonight. So, Dan has worked over 15 years on college campuses. Dan blends his lived experiences and industry proven research to craft engaging and relatable experiences that inspire us to be our authentic selves and to be brave enough to have conversations that matter. So I know, Dan, that you're gonna give us some more. So give us a little bit more. That was like a teaser. That
I
was
know
like
it's just a little
great.
morsel, right? It's like if you're baking, it's like you just get one chocolate chip, not the whole bag of chocolate chips. No, so again, yeah, and again, I'll just say thank you. So like Coach T, like you said, my name is Dan Faill. And so when you grow up with the last name Faill, and if you end up becoming a professional speaker and a consultant and a coach, and you don't talk about leadership and failure and everything that comes along with it, it is just a missed opportunity. Let's just be honest about that. So yeah, I'm excited to just kind of share a little bit more about me and that failure journey, but then also kind of see where the conversation goes for imposter syndrome or really kind of whatever that might look like for y'all. But just a little bit more. Let's see some titles that I've had in my life. I'm a fraternity man. I am a college graduate. I am let me say another title I had was husband. Another title I currently have is ex-husband. I'm also a father. And a speaker. And like I said, there's so many facets to our lives that we talk about or that we don't talk about. And I think for me, at least, where I've seen a lot of success with connecting with people, but then also just creating better relationships has been through being authentic. And I found my authenticity and my voice through vulnerability. Now, why do I say that? I say that because vulnerability is, it's not easy for people. And it's also not easy for men to really kind of open up. And so I do a lot of work around college campuses around masculinity. I used to work with fraternities and sororities for the better part of a decade. And so knowing that we have a lot of not only work to do, but systems in place that need to be deconstructed. So what do I mean by that? I mean, a lot of the work that I do now outside of the leadership realm is also around some social justice, DEI work. And yes, for those watching or listening at some point, let me just say, I fit every category of privilege, the boxes of privilege, right? I'm a straight white male. And I think looking at that, where I continue to show up as a better version of myself is using whatever platform, using whatever abilities I have to not only lift up others, but really say that part of what we need to be doing, we meaning, white men, but we meaning humanity, is really just to show up. And that's kind of what you alluded to in that introduction with, I want us to be brave enough to have the conversations that matter. Because I think so often we throw away conversations. I think that we just completely have day to day, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm good. All right, cool. And then we just don't ask anything else. Or if it's, hey, how's it going? I'm having a pretty hard day. Oh, you're having a hard day? I'm having a hard day. And then it becomes like a measuring contest of whose day is even worse. And no one wins at that point, right? Like you don't get a ribbon. There's no trophy for who's busier. And so I think being able to not only connect on a deeper level, what I like to call like the iceberg moments, those moments of just below the surface where things can really get deep, but showing up not only curious, but showing up as someone who cares, or at least is going to lead with curiosity in that aspect. And I think with the work that I do in the social justice DEI world, that's where I like to say, like, for us as humans, we need to show up and be curious. But for us, I'm going to acknowledge that I don't know it all. I will never know a lived experience of a person of color. I'll never know a lived experience of a woman, of a transgendered individual. I'll never know an experience outside of being a early 40s, almost said mid 40s, early 40s, straight white male. And I'm born in the South. I was born and raised in North Carolina. Now, what does that mean? That means we never talked about emotion. It means if you were having problems in your relationship, you didn't tell nobody about it. You're supposed to saddle up, pull your bootstraps, do whatever you can and fix it, right? And as men, I think too often we have almost been inundated with this. You're not allowed to have emotion. Or if you do have emotion, it can be anger or sports, or you could be angry at sports, right? Like, and that's it. Whereas we all know that there's not just one or the other, right? When it comes to toxic masculinity or masculinity as a whole, it's not toxic or not, right? It's not like leaded, unleaded. Like, that's not how that works. It's a spectrum of conversations. It's a spectrum of masculinity. It's a spectrum of identities. It's layered in so many different ways. And we often just stop. And as leaders, we can't just stop at the surface. We have to go below the surface, and we have to really look at what opportunities are not only in front of us, but behind us to learn from. And so I say all that with the realm of knowing that we can approach leadership of teams, of organizations, of families, of parenting, however you want to define leadership on your own. I think knowing that we're going to fail is important. And that concept around failure and the concept around vulnerability, neither are comfortable to talk about. But I like to take my approach and say, like, well, great. This is uncomfortable. Let's get uncomfortable. Like, let's go and have this uncomfortable conversation. And I think that's what curious people do. That's what good leaders do, is that they approach everything with not only an aspect of curiosity, but with an aspect of, we know that we're not going to be perfect. And if we know that we're not going to be perfect, what's possible? And so I have this whole aspect. I call it, so it's my phases of failure. And so like in this aspect, I've created almost like a Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like his little triangle, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that looks like an upside down pizza, which is really like, I think Maslow, great individual, great researcher of his time. I think it's outdated. And I think it's old because he only studied white people, white men. So outside of his hierarchy of needs, I've created this concept, this triangle that approaches failure as the pinnacle to success, right? The pinnacle of leadership, of successful leadership, is looking at it from a failure point of view. How can we encourage our teams, our families, our others, to fail, to want to fail? In this system, I think that there's a significant aspect of work we can do. And I've broken it up into 5 levels so this pyramid is surrounded by this concept of safety. And I'll get to the safety aspect in a minute. So let's break it down. In the first level, right, the base level of this pyramid is vulnerability. Why not start from the easiest subject, right? Just kidding. Vulnerability is not hard. But like looking at vulnerability as the base, because I think once we acknowledge that we don't know it all, once we acknowledge that we don't have our stuff together, because that's my favorite thing to see on different profiles that I talk, it's like, I'm just looking like, I'm single. And so the whole dating piece of like, oh, well, I'm just looking for someone with their ish together. Boo-boo, ain't nobody got their ish together. Okay. So like, if we can be vulnerable and acknowledge that no one has their ish together, that's a good starting point. Mm-hmm. So let's start from vulnerability. I don't have all the answers. I am not sure. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm not sure that I should be a leader. I'm not sure why I got hired in this position. Whatever that vulnerability level is, start and openly say it. And even if that's saying it in the mirror, even if that's saying it and just recording yourself on your phone or whatever that might look like, being vulnerable opens us up to having better connections. Now, when you are vulnerable saying, I don't know it all, that's when you can actually start to progress through the next layers or phases of failure. So after vulnerability comes this concept of creativity. Now, where did this come from and why is it creativity? Think about when you're most creative, when those ideas come. So for those that are watching live right now, like when do you come up with some of your best ideas? If it's like brainstorm, I'm a millionaire, I just have to make it all happen. Because for me, it usually happens in one of 2 places. I'm either in the shower or bath, or I'm about to fall asleep. And in those 2 realms, what we are looking at is we're a little bored. We don't have our phones to keep us busy. We just are there with our thoughts and we're just kind of processing the day. Maybe we're thinking about tomorrow. Maybe we're thinking about a different conversation, or we're just letting our minds roam. Now, when we are bored, we start to get those creative ideas. I came up with this concept falling asleep, and I actually rolled over and had a little scratch pad of paper and was like, and I drew the triangle, I put failure at the top, and then I had safety around it, and then I filled in all the blanks later. But this concept of looking at creativity, when you're creative, and when you have this incredible idea, that's going to unlock this next level, the next phase of it. Okay. So after creativity, once you're creative, you're going to get passionate about it. You're going to want to tell anyone and everyone else about this great idea that you have. Maybe it's, hey, I've got this great idea for a brand new Post-it note. I don't know, but knowing whatever it is, you're going to start telling everyone. And when someone is excited about their own idea, maybe it's a really bad idea, but that doesn't mean they're less excited about it. Mm-hmm. Right? So they're still going to share that. They're still going to be very passionate. But when you're passionate about it, it's like, well, I think that there's something to this, right? There's lightning in a bottle and there's something to this concept right now. Well, once you're passionate, you're going to say, because you're going to look back, I had this creative idea. I'm really passionate about it. And I don't know how to make it happen, the vulnerability aspect. Now you're going to progress to the next phase. And that next phase is all about learning. Right? So you're going to take that passion and you're going to figure out like, okay, what don't I know about this? So let's say I have this brand new idea for a phone that's revolutionary. And so here's what we're going to do. So I don't know how to make a phone, but who do I know? I'm going to talk to people, get passionate about it. And then like, what do I want this thing to do? So I'm going to find the different technical pieces. I'm going to learn about it myself. Okay. Easy peasy, right? So as I am learning, I'm also going to fail a lot. There's that old phrase, and I'm going to paraphrase it right now, but when Jefferson was asked how many times it took to make a light bulb, right? Like I learned of 100 ways to not make the light bulb. And then finally it worked. Cool. He learned ways not to do it. Right. So in those concepts of and understood failure. So knowing that failure was a part of that process, knowing that failure is going to not just set you back, but I'm of the opinion that when you spell out fail, F-A-I-L, right? Failures are intentional lessons. Boom. Or if you spell it like my last name, F-A-I-L-L, failures are intentional learning lessons. Here we go. Right.
Okay.
So there's different ways that you can look at failure as not the end all be all, but we treat failure as a society of like, well, I just don't want to be seen as a failure. Boo boo, who said you were? Others that don't know you? The internet? Because that's a great place to just go and get lost, right? Like who identifies success for you? We do. Right? Us as individuals, as our individual self, I can say that I am happy where I'm at or I am not happy where I'm at. I got a whole other like concept around choice theory, reality therapy that goes into all of that. However, I want to come back to this concept of safety, right? So you had vulnerability, creativity, passion, learning, and failure at the very top. Now, encapsulated in all of that is this concept of safety. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean physical and emotional and psychological safety, because no one is going to even start at the base level of vulnerability if they think that they're going to be made fun of. No one is going to want to fail or be creative with a new idea if they think that when they bring up the idea, they're going to get fired. No one is going to bring up any new creative item if they're like, well, I think my friends also said it was garbage, so like it's not good enough. Safety is what creates all of these opportunities for new ideas. Now, in this entire concept, right, how are you going to be vulnerable? So what are the different ways that you can open up to a friend, right? Maybe it's not a friend. I've found that sometimes our friends and family are the first ones to poo-poo on our ideas, right? They're the first ones to be like, well, that's a silly idea. Oh, you want to write a book? Good luck with that. As opposed to just finding a group of people who are going to be like, I love this. It should be a book. For example, I've got a friend, Chris, who literally texted me today that's like, hey, Dan, how's your book coming along? Because I'm writing it all around this phases of failure. And I was like, like new number, who this? Because I've not done a lot of writing. That being said, I had someone who said, this is a great idea and you should be writing a book. And so rather than someone who's going to just kind of crap on an idea, I found a group of people who are not only going to challenge me, but they're going to champion me too. And it's that elevation of friends. It's that elevation of a mastermind group or a group coaching, model or whatever that looks like for you. Finding those opportunities that really showcase that, like, yeah, your friends and family may not have a good idea because they may not think it's a good idea, but that's because they've known you for however long. So they might not see you in this new way. They may not think it's a good idea because maybe this is all that they've experienced in life. And that's how they're identifying your opportunity for growth in all these other realms or areas. So when I talk about going from vulnerability, you have to find that group who's going to be like, hey, thank you for sharing. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean. Like, have them help soak up and help you articulate your ideas. I had this random idea, and then I went to my friend Kate and I was like, hey, you have a doctorate. How do I make this sound smart? Like, I have this theory. How do I find articles? What do I do? Like, what do we need to do? And she and I co-authored an article that put this into life. So there are ways, and you can find those groups of people who challenge and champion you. It might not be a group that you're currently running in, and that's okay. So those vulnerable moments, and like I said, so creativity, what are ways that you can start to be more bored, right? Like, that's my challenge to everybody. How can you be more bored? Now, maybe that's taking a shower without taking your phone and putting on Spotify, right? Maybe that is, and so for me, I actually have a little pad of like wax paper, like put on the back of my shower, and I've got a pencil. And so whenever I have a harebrained idea, it's literally called shower thoughts, right? Because I don't want to let a good idea go down the drain. You're welcome for the dad joke. And so like being able to be bored. Can you take a walk, right? Like, and Coach T, I know that you're in Ohio and you said it was a little warm. maybe in the humidity is not a good idea, right? Like your boy perspires and glistens a lot when it's humid out, which is why I live in Los Angeles. So, but like, what does boredom look like? Is it taking a walk without your headphones? Quick story. I took a cross-country trip. I actually was speaking at the Kiwanis International Convention last week, and I forgot my headphones at home. Now, this is flying from LA to Indianapolis. This is not a short flight by any means. And I left my headphones at home. My nice noise canceling, great for flying, tune out the world headphones. So when I say tune out the world so that I can do work, I mean like watch whatever movies are on the flight. But in the midst of that, I looked at it as an opportunity. Yes, boo-hoo, I left them at home. What a moron. Okay, cool. Let me open up my laptop and let me just type out some things. I actually wrote a new keynote. On the flight, decided to write a new keynote. Why? Because I let my mind roam. And I actually said, well, here's this one keynote that I do. I don't think it's where it should be anymore. Let me scrap it, go back to the basics. And now I've got this, rather than fail forward, because again, use the last name, rather than fail forward, I'm going to go free to fail. Because being free 99 is the best 4-letter F word out there for most people, especially college students or those that might be financially struggling. But like looking at failure as an opportunity that's free and costs nothing. Again, if it's within the realm of feeling safe, etc. So creativity, figuring out how you can be bored. What are ways that you can legitimately be bored? Deborah, I see your comment that in first class they give you headphones. Your boy don't fly first class, okay? Like some people take a left when they get on a plane, some people take a right when they get on a plane. I'm always right. You feel me? And so, like, that's where I go. But like looking at creativity, right? And so looking at creativity and how you can be bored, again, shows up how you come out for passion. Now that passion, for me, who do you share it with, right? And I say this because, and like I already alluded to, there's a lot of people who are just going to crap on our ideas, and they're going to pull you down, right? But here's the people: it's the people that put you down, just pull you down to their level. I'll let you take that one for free, okay? Right? People who put you down are really just pulling you down to their level. So how do you level up? How do you go to that next piece of growth? I have a lot of friends. I have very few best friends. And I say that because a lot of my friends are all across the board. I've got college friends, high school friends. I got people I still talk to, and a lot of people I don't talk to, and some people that I've outgrown. That's okay, because I'm okay with growth. And I need to surround myself with people who are going to encourage me to grow rather than pull me back or hold me back. Now, in the midst of that passion and sharing it, you're going to know who's a champion for you real quick. I'm okay with those people who are going to be like, okay, but what about this? And what about this logistic? And what about this one? Because they're not nitpicking your idea to say it's bad. They almost want to see it succeed to make sure that you've thought through it all. Now, when it's a brand new idea, you're like, I don't really know, but like, I've got to decide. I'm excited about it. You'll take those and you'll start to learn, and you'll start to create those environments to learn and grow. So again, finding those different opportunities can be incredibly important. I think what stops us as leaders, as teams, and to shift from kind of like this failure concept to a mindset imposter syndrome piece, what stops us is literally like what's between here, right? Or really between our ears, between here. We let 1 foot, 12 inches of space, depending on how big your head is, we let that space dictate our life. We let it dictate a lot of our choices. We let it dictate how we show up. We let it dictate us taking chances or not. There's so many ways that we talk ourselves out of opportunities. Now, I say this. I'll do a quick exercise, quick example. So for anyone that's watching live, or for anyone at home that's maybe viewing it later, here's what I want you to do. Spell the word believe. So, all right, we're going to do a spelling bee real quick. So spell the word believe. And if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that real quick. Believe. Right? I believe in miracles. Right? Right? Okay. All right, Coach T. All right, we got it. We got some things here. Okay. All right. Believe. Now let's dissect that word a little bit. Because in the middle of the word believe is the word lie. In the middle of the word believe is the word lie. So what are those lies that you've ended up believing? Now, for me, I don't know about y'all, but for me growing up for the longest time, I used to tell myself that I'm fine. I'm fine. Right? Like, oh, how's everything going? I'm fine. Dan, you look a little stressed. I'm fine. Just busy, right? Just a little stressed, but I'm fine. And I think in the midst of all of those realms, in the midst of the area, I thought that I was fine, but I needed to work on myself a lot. I was not fine. I was defeated. I was not well. And I'll use another example. Over the course of 2020, right? I gave a keynote on stage, crushed it. It was up in Santa Barbara. It was March 7th, 2020. Well, the world came to a stop about a week later with the global pandemic. And when you're a public speaker and all of a sudden you watch every contract that you have for the rest of the year go away, I'll be honest with y'all. I'm going to be vulnerable with y'all. I curled up in fetal position for the better part of 2020. Okay. To be a public speaker with no public, I questioned everything. I questioned my purpose. I questioned am I on the right track? What am I doing? I'm an entrepreneur and I just left my full-time job a year ago. What in the world is wrong with me? Right? I was not happy with the agency that I was represented by. Am I good enough? What am I doing? And so in the midst of all of that, I started to believe that maybe I'm not good enough. That maybe, right, like I'm really busy every day writing stuff and trying to do things and be a dad and like all that, but I feel busy, not productive. And there's a difference there, right? And so for me, I didn't want to get off the couch. I basically caught up on Netflix, right? That's where I was. I went to therapy weekly. So quick shout out, therapy rocks. Highly recommend. And in those moments, I started to realize that, oh, I have a lot of opportunities. I have a lot of ways that I can still give back and I can still impact people, right? Because it's not like FaceTime and Zoom was a brand new invention. That stuff's been around for a while. So I have good opportunities and I had good friends that continued to help build me up a little bit. But there was still that little voice that was just like, I think there's some limits to what you can do, Dan. You've only got significant, like some limits that you can't get past. Let's do another activity for those playing along at home, okay? Let's do this. If you're able to and or want to, raise your hand as high as you can, right? Like as high as you can, raise your hand as high as you can. So Coach T, because I can see you right now, if you're willing to participate, I kind of hope that you do. Otherwise, this is awkward. Raise your hand or hands as high as you can, right? However you want to do it, perfect. Okay, but Coach T, I said as high as you can. But Coach T, stop playing. Coach T, I said as high as you can. You're still sitting down, right? I do this activity all the time with audiences. And here's the thing. Very rarely will that smart aleck in the back stand up on a chair. And then they're like, I got my hand as high as I can, Dan. I'm like, yes. All limitations are self-imposed, right? Ernest Holmes, I think, is who said that. All limitations are self-imposed. So when we think about, well, am I good enough? Yes, you're good enough. When you think about like, oh gosh, am I going to get called out for being a fraud in this job? Like I've been hired, and is this what I should be doing? I don't know. You got hired. So someone somewhere thought you could do the job, knew you could do the job, which is how you got the job. So that doubt that's creeping in, it's called imposter syndrome. Now, fun fact about imposter syndrome, there's no such thing. I got a friend of mine who's a mental health speaker, and he and I joke about it all the time, that imposter syndrome it's not a diagnosable syndrome. It actually shows up nowhere in like the Rolodex of different things that you can get diagnosed with. Imposter syndrome is a collection of feelings. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, it's going to show up in different ways. It's a feeling of fear. It's a feeling of inadequacy. It's a feeling of nervousness, of anxiety. It's going to show up different for me than it is for Coach T, than it is for Diane here in the chat, than it is for Deborah, than it is for anyone. So it's a collection of different feelings, all of which are somehow centered around the feeling of us not being enough. And again, who defines that? Who says that you are enough? Who defines success? You do. Now, maybe you've got job metrics. Maybe you've got some of that. Maybe you're like, well, I got to feed a family. I got to feed my kids. I got to like actually do work. Yes, that is a metric. But what's your metric of success, right? What are those different ways that we can get out of breaking out of the like believing the lies? So how do we actually grow and evolve and continue and to do more and more and more? I think a lot of that stems from us looking in the mirror. And I did a lot of, I still do therapy weekly. I'm not gonna lie about that. But finding ways to actually ask ourselves the question of, well, who are you? What do you stand for? What's out there that maybe I don't understand or believe in? Because the biggest place that we can get lost is the internet, trying to find out who we are. Right. And I see Deborah just put in the chat, no matter what, there's the net. Yes, you can get, a lot of resources. In the wake of the murder of George Floyd, I used to hear a lot of my friends say, like, if you want to know how to help Black people, Google it. I'm going to let you know right now, depending on your search history, Google might not be the best resource for education for you. Okay, so it's very easy to get misinformation as opposed to reflective information. Now, what I mean by that is pretty simple. Don't just take everything at face value. You've got to read something, discern it, reflect on it, see if it has meaning for you, and then show up to see what it is. Because too often, we're going to compare ourselves or our own success to social media. Right? We're going to look and see what's on other people's highlight reel as opposed to seeing what's successful for us. Because now we're going to compare our chapter 1, and I'll use being an entrepreneur as an example. So my chapter 1 as an entrepreneur, if I'm going to look at like, I don't know, I'm going to use Gary Vee, even though he's such an a-hole, but to use that as an example, right? I can't compare my chapter 1 to his chapter 20. We might not even be in the same book, right? And so, but if I'm comparing me currently to where he is now, that's not a good, I'm setting myself up for failure at that point, but I'm also setting myself up for disappointment and frustration. It's okay to look and see, well, how can I reverse engineer some of that success? What are podcasts that he's been on? What are different ways that I can look and see whomever it is? Like Beyonce just dropped a fire track today. Okay, cool. What was her like past successes? And how did that, can I build on any of that? There's a lot of opportunities, but we just get stuck in well, they got it better. I wish I had that. And we've got to break through the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the TikTok. We got to break through a lot of that imperfection, the perceived perfection with our own imperfections. And where does that happen? Vulnerability, right? That bottom level of the phases of failure, vulnerability to say, I don't have all my act together, and that's okay. What do I need help with? Asking for help is pretty hard. Showing up and helping someone because you care, that's a good relationship to have. And so again, I think there's a lot of opportunities and of ways, and I want to be able to like field any questions and Coach T any items from you. But I'll leave you with one last fun example of imposter syndrome. So one of the things that I like to do, I like to doodle, I like to draw. My kids often commission me to like do art for their rooms or stuff like that. But I've started to do different little pieces of artwork, and I've got them all here next to my desk. And I've got one specifically that I absolutely love. Actually, it's two that I really love. And so I'm going to hold it up to the camera. Hopefully, if you're watching, you can see that it's a little fun little image of Jiminy Cricket. Now, who is Jiminy Cricket? For those that might not know or remember, Jiminy Cricket was kind of like the voice of conscience in Pinocchio, right? So there's a new live action remake that's going to happen with Tom Hanks. So I'm hoping that he as Geppetto does really well. But Jiminy Cricket is providing Pinocchio all of these like, hey, do this, be sure not to go over to those like misfit boys because you might turn into a bit of a donkey, right? And Jiminy Cricket is trying to guide him in a productive manner. Now, I view that as your positive voice, whereas imposter syndrome shows up as the negative voice. I drew my imposter syndrome. I named and drew my imposter syndrome. And my imposter syndrome's name is Jimmy Cockroach, right? So Jimmy Cockroach, for those able to see this, Jimmy, he's a cockroach. And he looks like he's trying to be well-dressed in his nice little top hat, but he's a cockroach. So it's like still not great. He's also flipping you off because Jimmy Cockroach doesn't think that you can do anything right. Now, I don't know why, but when Jimmy Cockroach shows up for me, he kind of sounds like a 70-year-old smoker from Jersey. No offense to my Jersey friends, but I don't know why, but he just kind of shows up and he's like, I don't know why you're going to do this. Like, you can't do it. Why are you even trying? Like, forget about it. Don't even do it. So, and I don't even know if that's a good Jersey accent or not, let's be honest. But like, Jimmy Cockroach shows up and just like you're laughing, Coach T, that for me is how I hear it. So when I hear the self-doubt, when I hear the like, well, you can't do that, I then try to reframe it in Jimmy Cockroach's voice, and I hear him and see him and laugh because it is ridiculous. Now, there's a lot of coaches and a lot of people in the world that it's like, oh, well, when you have negative thoughts, just put them aside. Like, don't think about them at all. Just cast them away. That don't work. It doesn't work. If I tell you not to think about pink elephants, there's a good chance most of you just thought about pink elephants, right? So if I tell you to stop focusing on the negative, you're just calling into that negative. Now, what you can do, and this is the best advice I heard, is put it in the passenger seat, right? So I'm driving and I have this weird, random, not good thought. I'm going to acknowledge it, okay? Got this negative thought. Tell you what, hop in the back seat, right? I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm just not going to let it drive the car anymore. So how can you find different ways or methods to just acknowledge those little bits and pieces of imposter syndrome and the negative thoughts that show up? And I have a lot of different resources and things like that I'm more than happy. It's all on my website, and Coach T, we can talk about that in a little bit. But being able to look at failure as opportunities. But those opportunities don't happen unless there's some level of vulnerability in place first. In the midst of wanting to fail, in the midst of being vulnerable, in the midst of being creative or passionate or wanting to learn, we're going to have that negative voice pop up. We're going to have that concept of imposter syndrome show up. Now, there was a study done, I think at this point it's probably 3 years old, from Psychology Today. Ooh, I forget the actual resource right now. But it said that 70% of people in the US have imposter syndrome at some point in their life. I think we have all had it. We just didn't know the name of it. So I'm of the opinion that everyone has had some form of imposter syndrome. Again, it's not diagnosable, but it is a series of feelings or a grouping of different feelings that can show up. So knowing that you're not alone in feeling inadequate, knowing that you're not alone worried about failure, knowing that you're not alone figuring out what can happen now is a really cool place to start. Because here's what this is going to feel like. And again, for those that want to participate, for those watching right now, I'm going to give you one last activity to try. So Coach T, because I can see you, I'm going to make you do this with me. Again, if you want, it's a challenge by choice activity, but I hope that you'll go along with me. I want you to cross your arms, right? Kind of like cross your arms like you're in a meeting that could have been an email. You all know what I'm talking about, right? So crossing your arms, great, perfect. Take a look, okay? Now here's what I want you to do. I want you to uncross them, shake them out a little bit. Cool. Now cross them the other way. I bet some of you are like, have never questioned your right from your left like you have just now, okay? So Coach T, how does that feel? To have your arms crossed the other way, how does that feel?
It feels a lot different. I mean, it feels more, I don't know, more free, really. The other way, I feel like, yeah, why am I here? And this way, I feel more like, wait a minute. Like
that's a whole new take. I love this. Yes, Coach T. Okay, so like, let's use that. So one way, it's very shut off. It is the very standard because we've always done it that way, right? And so if we've always done it this way, now you've done it and it feels a little different, it feels a little interesting, it feels a little freeing because it is different.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you to do the same thing. I said, cross your arms. Now cross them again. Just do it a little bit differently. So I asked you to do the same thing. And this is what believing in yourself looks and feels like. It's the same thing. It's just going to feel a little bit different. This is what trying to fail looks like. It's going to feel a little bit awkward. It's going to feel a little bit different. It might feel a little bit unnatural, right? These are the different ways that we need to start showing up. We need to start getting a little bit more uncomfortable. Think about all the different patterns that you do, right? Think about everything. Which side of your mouth do you start brushing your teeth on, right? Which, when you use your toothbrush, do you put water in it and then toothpaste, or do you put toothpaste and then water? Are you like, why are you doing water, right? So like, what are those different pieces that we do? And so I'm challenging you all, when it's leadership, when it's failure, vulnerability, imposter syndrome, believing in yourself, show up this week 3% better than you did last week. 3% is nothing, right? My type A personalities are like, did you mean 30 and you said 3? That's adorable, right? In the South, we would say that, bless your heart, right? And so like looking at how we show up, maybe it's not this week, maybe it's this month. Show up 3%, believing in yourself 3% better. Because 3% becomes 6%, becomes 12%, becomes 24%, becomes 48, then becomes math at 96, right? So like knowing that you can continually improve, and it has an exponential effect because you can hack your brain to believe in yourself a little bit more. You can say, I had a really busy day, or you could say, I was really productive today. Right? I coach people on how to be speakers all the time, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm so anxious. No, you're not nervous. You're excited because your brain doesn't know any different. So you can trick your brain into believing different things. And again, are you going to believe that you're going to have a good day, or are you going to believe that you have a stressful day? Because you wake up ready to have that feeling. I used to go to bed dreading the next day because I'm one of those people that I'll take my phone and I'll move a meeting to the next day. Or I'm not a meeting, excuse me. I'll move like a task to the next day. I'm like, I'm not going to do it today. I'll move it to tomorrow. And then when I'm going to bed, I'm like, why do I have all this stuff to do? And I'm a horrible person and I didn't do any of it. That's not the thing. The thing is, I started to make a list of what I would, daily accomplishments before going to bed. My daily wins list. And I actually have it. I update it as often as I remember to. Daily wins. So that way I go to bed feeling accomplished and I wake up ready to have more wins. So again, maybe it's a question of busy versus productive. Maybe it's a question of understanding where failure can be a part of your journey. But there's a lot of different opportunities that we could take advantage of. We just have to look for them a little bit differently.
I love that. I think it's very important for us to talk about failure. I know when I'm mentoring young people, a lot of times they see your journey today. They don't necessarily see the steps of what it took to get to that point. And so then it's like, I can't fail. I can't, I have to just do what you did.
Yeah. Right. Like there's no perfect book out there. And, and I see a lot of people that are like, 10x your income. And again, I'm in the coaches, consulting, speaking realm. And I see a lot of people that are like 10x your income and make $100,000 in a year speaking. It's like, you're not going to come out of the gate doing that. Like, I need people to understand, and that's not to like poo-poo on your idea. It's literally to say like, let's be practical. Let's set you up for success. Yes. Let me give you skills. Yes. Let me give you some tips and tricks of ways to get ahead. Yes. But I don't like people who empty promise. And I think that's how a lot of people are sold, is that I can help you 10x your customer sales. But if you're not getting through to people, and if change isn't starting at the top, then are we really just setting up the company for frustration? And so there's just a lot of different ways that I think we could do a better job coaching up, coaching down, coaching out, but then really viewing leadership and failure and vulnerability as cornerstones of any experience, especially what I would say like a corporate or just anyone who's leading a team. How are you creating, number one, the safety, but number two, those different levels for people to continue to progress through?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the key. So we do have a few people that tuned in, and so want to make sure that I recognize them because I appreciate them watching the show. So Camille, she was watching. Not sure where you're at, but thank you for tuning in. Miss Diane, she's here in Cincinnati, Ohio, so she tuned in and wanted to say hey as well. And then Deborah, she tuned in and she had a lot of discussion in the chat. So, Deborah, thank you so much for landing on this show. And this was one of the comments that she mentioned earlier when you first started, and you were just talking, you were talking about DE and I. And so she was saying, true, she noticed the intersectionality of opening up between cultures and ethnic backgrounds.
Yeah.
And from her experience in healthcare, isolation of non whites opening up to be vulnerable with Black African Americans and Africans in healthcare. And then we had some additional discussion. Camille, she said she loves when people know how busy you are, and then they proceed to say they are so busy. So that was one of the things that you talked about earlier as well. So a lot of great discussion, and Camille says she's from New York.
Hey, sorry if I butchered an accent. I can do Southern really well. Everything else is just dialect.
And then Deborah, as you were talking about, I forget what you were talking about, but she said my A&P profession did this, and I'm still trying to work both sides of my brain, basically around the thinking. You can choose to be anxious or you can choose to be excited. You could choose to be positive or you could choose to have an overwhelmed and stressed out day. So yeah. So how can the viewers, because our time will be coming to a close soon, but I want to let the viewers know how they can get and stay connected with you. And viewers, if you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat. So Dan, can you tell us how they can get and stay connected with you?
For sure. So thankfully, not that many Dan Fails in the world. So if you can just Google Dan Faill and I'll pop up. But I'm danfaill.com. So on my website, there is actually, if you go down and scroll down to the very bottom, there's a little link that you can fill out for handouts. And so I have a handout on imposter syndrome. I have a multi-page handout on failure and being free to fail and what that looks like. And so happy to continue those conversations. Or you can slide into DMs. I don't know if people still say slide into DMs. I don't know. But I'm Dan Faill on all social media platforms from LinkedIn to Instagram and across the board. That is probably the best way to get a hold of me is either Instagram or Twitter for those.
All right. So make sure you connect with Dan either on his website, danfaill.com, or slide into his DM for your leadership and personal growth nuggets. Nothing else. Well, I don't know. Maybe you want something else. But on his social media platforms, Dan Faill on all social medias.
Yep. Perfect. And thank you all. And again, reach out. Deborah, I see that the arms crossing and doing new thoughts, behaviors like that was helpful. Reach out to me. Let me know what was helpful. Let me know if there's anything that resonated with you or if there's any way that I can help out any of your organizations, your teams, any of that. Again, I come from a higher ed experience. So I've worked with generations. I'm a Gen X. So I've worked with Gens Y, Z, millennials, iGen, Apple Gen. When these people grow up, they're going to be quarantines, like whatever the generations are. So I'm happy to continue to help. And I want to, again, thank you, Coach T, for having me here and for everybody tuning in. I appreciate you all.
I'm excited that you were able to stop in and share with the audience. I always learn something new and I learn something different. So like Deborah, the arms crossing make me think. Because you're right, you can be in one stance and you're like, okay, I got my arms crossed. Here we go again. Here's another meeting. It's like, oh. But then when I crossed them the other way, I did have a totally different feeling. And so if I carry just that one nugget, although you gave several awesome nuggets, but if I gave just that one and implemented and applied, I think it will change the trajectory of my life. So thank you so much for just sharing those nuggets of that being vulnerable, of that being creative and getting still too. And sometimes we get so busy with life that we forget to get back to the basics.
Exactly.
So yeah, so this was an awesome talk. Camille said a lot of your talk resonated with her, so I'm sure she'll be able to take that to her teams. And I'm sure you're in healthcare, I think, Camille, so she'll be able to share that with her teams in healthcare. And then Deborah said, thank you so much. So she's in healthcare as well. And Miss Diane is an entrepreneur, but she also works with young girls
Hey, MSW. Okay. Yep.
in our elementary and middle school. So she said, you were very helpful as well. So, in our last few minutes together, does anybody have any final questions? And if not, Dan, what is that one tidbit that you would like to leave the listeners and viewers with that they can implement right away? Because I'm a strong believer that you can get a lot of content, but I want you to get some action. And sometimes when you hear so much, you do nothing. So, what would be that one tidbit that you leave the viewers with?
I love and hate this question at the same time. You're asking as someone who does 60 to 75-minute keynotes to give one thing. I guess my challenge to you all, and I alluded to it, is what will you shift or change to be 3% better in whatever time frame makes sense for you this week, this month, this quarter, this year? How can you show up differently in that 3% and make a commitment to do so? And will you make that commitment to a colleague? Will you make it to a family member? Will you post it on social media to hold others accountable so that they can hold you accountable and that you can help start a movement? How will you additionally move forward to be 3% better? And either that's 3% of more of a failure, 3% more of addressing that imposter syndrome, 3% more of just being more present or more bored, and finding those ways that you can actually show up and be better.
Well, all right. You all heard it. It only takes 3%. Start with the 3% and get accountability from there. I like it. I'm gonna get with my accountability partners and start shifting that 3%.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Dan, so much for coming and sharing with the audience. This was awesome. And I really appreciate you taking your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Happy to help. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, viewers, for tuning in to this week's episode of Leadership Tidbits. I hope you were able to get at least one nugget, but I know you walked away with a sheet full of all kind of nuggets that you're going to apply and move the needle, even if it's 3%, moving that 3% this week and next week more, and the next week more and more and more. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel, with another amazing mentor. Share this broadcast out. And until we meet again, my friends, I hope you have an amazing week.